Hello! So following on from my Genesis SP12 video, this is going to be the second and last Genesis video I do with this JD-800 that used to belong to Tony Banks. And this is what he used on tour throughout the 1990s, and it's still got his tour patches in it. So this is going to be really simple. All I'm going to do is just go through those patches and see what he was using at the time. Okay, so let's show you the first sound on here. It is called IT. Immediately the Genesis fans amongst you know what that is. I'm going to do a terrible rendition of it, excuse my playing, but you should still be able to recognise what it's supposed to be. So that is, of course, she must have an invisible touch, yeah. She reaches out and grabs right hold of your arse. That is Invisible Touch, or this is the tour sound that Tony Banks used in the 90s. So let's have a look at what it actually is. So there's three layers to this sound. Tone A is switched off. Tone B is this. It's a very basic synth sound with a bit of vibrato, and it's velocity sensitive on the filter and the amp. These are time variant filters and time variant amps. They're digital. You've then got two layers on the right hand side only, and a hilarious thing is there's a split point carved into this synth. You can imagine Tony Banks, guys, I need to know where the split point is. Hang on a second, Tony, I've got a Stanley knife. There you go. Cheers, guys. So this is one of those layers, which is down the octave, and I think tuned slightly flat. And this is the other one, down the octave, a bit brighter and slightly sharp. Put those two together, you get that chorusing sound. Put in the original layer, up the octave, and there's the full effect. And just to demonstrate to you, if I turn off tone B, nothing on the left, it's only tone B that is on the left, and I guess that's because the bass and like the kick drum and stuff was happening in the low end, so you don't need all that. And that is Tony Banks' touring sound for Invisible Touch that he used throughout the 90s. Okay, next up we've got two patches that were used on Home by the Sea when playing live. I had to look up a live performance to see what they were used for, and the first patch is used for this part. So that's used in the earlier part of the song. It's got three layers. So tone A is a kind of choiry sound. Tone B is off. Tone C, kind of sawtoothy synth sound, classic pad sound. And then same thing again, brighter and up the octave. Let's put those two together with the onboard effects as well as some reverb going on, isn't there? And that's the whole effect, and it works very well for those plucked out arpeggios that are used in the early part of the song. Okay, the second home patch is called Home End, and I found where it's used in the song, and it goes... So there's a little solo that's used in the ending part of the very long song. So there's four parts. Kind of slightly choiry. It's almost like a Mellotron kind of remake, which would make sense given the band's history. another sawtooth sound. And again, a variation with that detuning. Just gives some nice width to it. And then part D, which is works with tone A. That's all 4. So you've got a lot of that detuning octave doubly thing going on. And it cuts through nicely as a lead sound. So there we go. There's the other Home by the Sea sound. Okay, next we've got a sound called Domino End, which is used at the end of Domino when they're playing live. I found the exact part that he's playing with it, which is... So there's 4 layers. So layer A, it's a very basic sawtooth, and tone D is the same sound but just tuned sharp. So there's the 2 together. So you get that detuned thing. Tone B is down the octave, but it's also got some envelope modulation of pitch. It starts below pitch and bends up, as you can hear. And then tone C is just the same sound with no pitch modulation. So there's those 2 together, and then the other 2 up the octave. You get the full effect for the little motif that you hear at the end of Domino. Okay, we've then got 2 patches from In the Cage. This is the first one. And so on. So I don't know what he used on The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. I'm sure someone will tell me in the comments section. But in the late 70s and then into the 80s, he was using the ARP Quadra, which has that phaser built into it. And the original recording's got a phaser. So they've just basically made a version of that sound. So there's the original version using I don't know what. Then there's the ARP Quadra version. And then there's another version on the JD-800, which is interesting unto itself. There's then another In the Cage patch, which is used for that famous solo, which I can't play, but, you know... that kind of thing. Sorry, I can't play it, and I can't be bothered to spend a week learning it. But it's actually their recreation in the 90s of a sound that he was coming from the lead synthesizer section of the Quadra in the late 70s, early 80s. I've done a video on the Quadra if you want to hear that. And then there's the earlier period where I don't know what they use, maybe a pro soloist or something. So it's actually a basic kind of emulation of an analog type sound. Okay, next up we've got some sounds from Mama. This is called P10 Mama, which I think is Prophet 10 Mama, which is what he must have done it on originally. So... I know that's the wrong chords, I'm just winging it, but it's a great sound, isn't it? Let's listen what's in it. So you've got tone A and tone D is a sharper, brighter version in the same octave. Then we've got tone B and tone C, which are that same thing where you detune down the octave, add the top octaves, and that is a hell of a sound, isn't it? It's great. The other one is this one, which is called Mama Polly, which is a really short little sound. I'm not quite sure where that was used, but it seems to be another Mama sound. If you recognise it, let me know. Okay, next we've got a song that Genesis wrote about the Chuckle Brothers, Follow You, Follow Me. So this is 2 parts, tone A, pulse wave with some glide and some effects, and part C, same sound but slightly detuned. You can hear that glide there. So it's supposed to sound like a 2 oscillator patch like the one he did on the ARP 2600 back in the day. Okay, next there's a Watcher of the Skies patch in here, which I think would be this. Etc. So the original is famously done on the Mellotron, and this doesn't really sound like it at all. So I don't know if I'm using completely the wrong patch for the wrong sound, and I've just seen Watcher of the Skies in there and thought that must be that. Or if, you know, they did a kind of modern version, if you see what I mean, of that sound for the 90s, because, you know, the 70s was long gone, Mellotrons were old hat. So I guess perhaps this was their modern version of it. I can't find a live version that gives me a definitive answer, but if you know, please let me know. Okay, so to finish up, I'm going to smash through a few in quick succession. So we've got a Carpet Crawlers live patch. It's a lovely pad. So obviously in the 70s, it was not done on a JD-800. But this is quite effective for playing live in the 90s. Okay, there's an Abacab organ patch in here. So originally that was done on an actual organ, so this is a synthesized version of that. Synthesizers can very easily emulate organ sounds. And lastly, there's one called MB, which I thought was the music box, but then it doesn't seem to match that song at all. It's just your classic dirty synth guitar sound, which is kind of interesting unto itself. So there we go, Tony Banks' JD-800 that he used on tour throughout the 1990s. It's really fascinating to find the solutions that they came up with for recreating sounds from different eras of Genesis, because Genesis is just a universe of sonic explorations. And I imagine this was actually a really powerful tool at the time, because it allowed you to make versions of lots and lots of different sounds from different pieces of equipment throughout the years, and then just compile them here and then just recall patches. So really, really fascinating. I know loads of you are saying, please can you give me a SysX dump of this instrument so I can have all the patches? And I'm afraid I cannot. I've been told categorically that I cannot give that away. I can play the sounds that are on the instrument, but I can't start giving away data. I'm sure you understand. But I hope the video in itself, just having a little reveal of what the sounds Tony was using at the time, was interesting enough for you. Huge thank you to Andrew Ward for the loan of his JD-800, and a massive thank you to you for watching.